In the bustling slums of Neo-Tokyo, where neon lights flickered weakly through a haze of smog, lived a girl named Aki. At just 12 years old, she had already faced more hardship than most adults. Orphaned at a young age, Aki scraped by on the streets, her only companion, a mangy but loyal stray cat she'd named Whisker. Little did Aki know that high above the polluted skies of Earth, a vast alien armada lurked. The Zor'thax, a fearsome race of conquerors, had been observing humanity for decades, analyzing our weaknesses and preparing for invasion. Among their ranks was Kra'zok, the most feared hunter in the galaxy, a being so terrifying that even his fellow Zor'thax kept their distance. As fate would have it, on a cold, rainy night, these two unlikely souls were about to cross paths. Aki huddled under a crumbling overpass, her threadbare jacket pulled tight around her thin frame. Whisker purred softly in her lap, offering what little warmth he could. The girl's stomach growled fiercely. It had been 2 days since her last proper meal. Suddenly, the air crackled with energy. A blinding flash illuminated the underpass, causing Aki to shield her eyes. When she lowered her hand, she gasped. There, not 10 feet away, stood a creature straight out of her nightmares. The alien towered over her, easily 8 feet tall. Its body was covered in iridescent scales, shifting colors in the dim light. Wickedly curved claws adorned its forearms, and a mass of writhing tentacles surrounded a mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth. But what struck Aki most were its eyes, multifaceted, like an insect's, yet glowing with an eerie intelligence. Kra'zok, for his part, was equally stunned. His cloaking device had malfunctioned during atmospheric entry, leaving him exposed in this primitive urban wasteland. He'd expected to encounter panicked humans fleeing in terror at the sight of him. Instead, he found himself face to face with a small, fragile-looking female youngling. For a long moment, predator and potential prey regarded each other in silence. Aki's heart raced, but curiosity overcame her fear. In all her years on the streets, she'd learned to trust her instincts. And something in those alien eyes spoke not of malice, but of confusion, and perhaps a hint of loneliness. She recognized all too well. Slowly, carefully, Aki stood up. Whisker hissed and darted behind a pile of trash, but the girl took a tentative step forward. Kra'zok tensed, his claws flexing instinctively. He'd eviscerated beings 10 times her size without hesitation. Why did he now find himself unable to move? "Hello," Aki said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you lost too?" Kra'zok's translator implant deciphered her primitive language. Lost. The very idea was preposterous. He was the apex predator of the galaxy, the scourge of 1,000 worlds. He was. Looking into the eyes of a child who showed no fear, only compassion. Against every instinct honed through centuries of combat, Kra'zok lowered himself to one knee, bringing his terrifying visage level with Aki's gaze. He opened his mouth, razor-sharp teeth glinting, and spoke in a voice like grinding boulders. "This place is not familiar." Aki nodded sagely, as if conversing with an alien killing machine was an everyday occurrence. "The streets can be confusing, especially at night. Are you hungry? I don't have much, but I'm happy to share." She reached into her tattered pocket and pulled out a slightly squashed protein bar, her entire food supply for the next day. Without hesitation, she unwrapped it and broke it in half, offering the larger portion to Kra'zok. The absurdity of the situation was not lost on the alien hunter. He, who had feasted on the still-beating hearts of his enemies, was being offered sustenance by the weakest creature he'd encountered on this backwater planet. And yet, with movements far gentler than he knew he was capable of, Kra'zok accepted the meager offering. He had no need for human food, but he recognized the significance of the gesture. As he pretended to eat the protein bar, secretly storing it in an auxiliary stomach for later analysis, Kra'zok felt something he hadn't experienced in eons. doubt. All his life, he'd been taught that other species were inferior, fit only for conquest or eradication. But this small human, with her illogical kindness, defied everything he thought he knew. Aki, oblivious to the earth, shattering paradigm shift occurring in her new acquaintance's mind, simply smiled. "I'm Aki," she said, pointing to herself. Then, summoning every ounce of courage she possessed, she slowly reached out her hand. Kra'zok watched in fascination as the tiny appendage approached. He could smell the fear radiating from her, see the slight tremor in her fingers, and yet she persevered. Her hand made contact with the scales on his forearm, and she began to gently stroke them. The galaxy's deadliest predator, feared across star systems, melted under the touch of a human child. "Your skin is so pretty," Aki murmured, marveling at the way the scales shifted color under her fingers. "Like a rainbow." For the first time in his centuries-long existence, Kra'zok felt cherished, not respected out of fear, not valued for his tactical prowess, but appreciated simply for being himself. It was a heady, confusing sensation. Their peaceful moment was shattered by a commotion in the distance. Harsh voices and the thud of heavy boots echoed off crumbling concrete. "There. The energy signature is coming from over there." Aki's eyes widened in panic. "Oh no," she whispered. "It's the street cleanup crew. They take kids like me to the workhouses. We have to hide." Kra'zok stood to his full, intimidating height. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to eliminate the threat, to bathe this miserable alley in the blood of those who dared interrupt his encounter. But as he looked down at Aki's frightened face, he knew he couldn't expose her to such violence. Making a decision that would alter the course of galactic history, Kra'zok scooped Aki into his arms. "Hold tight, small one," he growled, "and do not fear." With inhuman speed and agility, the alien predators scaled the side of the crumbling building, leaping from ledge to ledge with Aki clinging to his neck. They emerged onto the rooftop just as flashlight beams swept the alley below. Aki gasped in wonder at the glittering cityscape spread out before them. She'd never seen her world from this vantage point before. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Kra'zok gazed not at the city, but at the child in his arms. In her eyes, he saw not the harsh neon and smog, but wonder and possibility. For the first time, he began to perceive this world as something more than simply a target for conquest. A plaintive meow drew their attention. Somehow, Whisker had managed to follow them to the rooftop. The scraggly cat wound himself around Kra'zok's feet, purring loudly. Aki giggled. "I think he likes you." As Kra'zok stood on that rooftop, a human child in his arms and a contented cat at his feet, he knew his life would never be the same. The invasion plan suddenly seemed hollow, meaningless in the face of this small moment of connection. Somewhere high above, in the cloaked Zor'thax mothership, alarms began to blare. Their fiercest warriors' life signs were registering unprecedented readings. Confusion and panic spread through the command center as they tried to make sense of the data. Little did they know that down on the surface, an unlikely friendship was blossoming, one that would ultimately reshape the destiny of two species. Kra'zok looked to the stars, then back at Aki. "Small one," he said, his gravelly voice softer than before. "I believe I have much to learn from you." Aki beamed up at him. "And I can't wait to learn about you. But first," her stomach growled loudly, "do you know where we could find some food?" The fearsome predator threw back his head and let out a sound that, in his species, passed for laughter. "Come," he said, gathering both Aki and Whisker securely in his arms. "I suspect this night holds many more adventures for us." And with that, the most unlikely trio in the universe set off across the rooftops of Neo-Tokyo in search of dinner and the beginning of an extraordinary journey. As Kra'zok leapt from rooftop to rooftop with inhuman grace, Aki clung tightly to him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The cool night air whipped past them, carrying the sense of the city, a blend of pollution, food stalls, and humanity that was uniquely Earth. "Where are we going?" Aki shouted over the rush of wind. Kra'zok's multifaceted eyes scanned the urban landscape below. His advanced senses picked up on a concentration of organic matter and heat signatures several blocks away. "I believe I have located a source of sustenance," he rumbled. They touched down in a narrow alley behind what appeared to be a bustling restaurant. Delicious aromas wafted from the back door, making Aki's stomach growl even louder. Whisker, who had somehow maintained his grip during their rooftop journey, leapt down and began to sniff around hopefully. "Oh wow," Aki breathed. "I've never been to this part of the city before. It smells amazing." Kra'zok set the girl down gently, then activated his cloaking device. To Aki's astonishment, he seemed to shimmer and then vanish entirely. "Stay here," his disembodied voice instructed. "I will procure nourishment." Before Aki could protest, she heard the soft whoosh of the restaurant's back door opening and closing. Nervous but trusting, she crouched down next to Whisker and waited. Inside the kitchen, chaos reigned as chefs and servers rushed to keep up with the dinner rush. None of them noticed as various items: a whole roast chicken, a large bowl of rice, several pieces of grilled fish, and an assortment of vegetables seemed to float off counters and out the door of their own accord. Moments later, Kra'zok reappeared in the alley, his arms laden with enough food to feed a small army. Aki's eyes widened in disbelief. "Did you steal all that?" she asked, a note of uncertainty in her voice. Kra'zok tilted his head, confused by her reaction. "I have acquired provisions," he stated matter-of-factly. "Is this not acceptable?" Aki bit her lip, conflicted. She'd had to steal to survive before, but never on this scale. "It's just taking things without paying isn't right," she explained hesitantly. "Even if we're hungry." The alien predator considered her words carefully. The concept of ownership was foreign to his species. On his world, resources were simply taken by those strong enough to claim them. But he sensed this was important to Aki, and he found himself wanting to understand. "I see," he said slowly. "Then we shall make amends." Before Aki could ask what he meant, Kra'zok reached into a hidden compartment in his armor and pulled out a small, glowing crystal. He placed it just inside the restaurant's back door. The energy contained within this crystal could power this entire structure for many cycles, he explained. "It is payment." Aki's face lit up with relief and admiration. "That's perfect. Thank you for listening and trying to make it right." As they settled down to eat their improvised feast, Aki couldn't help but marvel at the strange turns her life had taken. Here she was sharing dinner with a creature from another world, one who could easily crush her but instead was learning from her. Between bites of the most delicious meal she'd had in years, Aki peppered Kra'zok with questions. "Where are you from? Why did you come here? Are there more like you?" Kra'zok, unused to such open curiosity, found himself answering with a frankness that surprised even him. He told her of the vast Zor'thax empire, of planets conquered and civilizations subjugated. But as he spoke, he began to hear his own words through Aki's ears, and for the first time, he felt a twinge of something like shame. "Your people," Aki said softly, "they hurt others, don't they? Like the bad men who run the workhouses hurt kids like me." The parallel struck Kra'zok like a physical blow. He had never considered the conquered species as anything more than resources to be exploited. But looking at Aki, so small, yet so full of kindness and wisdom, he couldn't imagine snuffing out such a light. "Perhaps," he admitted, his voice low, "we have been mistaken in our ways." As they finished their meal, sirens began to wail in the distance. Kra'zok tensed, ready for action, but Aki laid a gentle hand on his arm. "It's okay," she assured him. "That's just the nightly curfew alarm. It means kids like me need to find shelter." Kra'zok looked down at her, This tiny being who had shown him more compassion in a few hours than he'd experienced in his entire life. He made a decision. "You will come with me," he declared. "I will ensure your safety." Aki hesitated. "But where? I don't have a home." Kra'zok's eyes gleamed with determination. "Then we shall make one." Scooping up Aki and Whisker once more, the alien warrior took to the rooftops. But this time, instead of staying low, he began to ascend. Higher and higher they climbed, past the smog layer and into the clearer air above. Aki gasped as the true night sky revealed itself, a tapestry of stars she'd only dreamed of seeing. They came to rest on the observation deck of Neo-Tokyo's tallest skyscraper, long abandoned due to structural instability. But to Kra'zok's enhanced senses, it was perfectly safe and defensible. "Here," he said, setting Aki down gently, "we can rest and plan." As Aki curled up against his warm, scaly side, Whisker purring contentedly in her lap, she felt truly safe for the first time in years. "Thank you," she murmured sleepily, "for everything." Kra'zok kept vigilant watch through the night, his mind racing. He knew that soon he would have to face the consequences of his actions. The Zor'thax would not take kindly to one of their greatest warriors going rogue. But as he looked down at the sleeping child who had so quickly become precious to him, he knew he would face any threat to keep her safe. As the first light of dawn began to paint the sky, Kra'zok made a solemn vow. He would not only protect Aki, but he would find a way to show his people that there was another path, one of coexistence and mutual understanding. It would not be easy, but as he had learned from this remarkable human child, the most worthwhile things in life rarely were. Little did either of them know that their night of unexpected friendship was only the beginning. The choices they had made would set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the future of both their species, and perhaps the entire galaxy. As the sun rose over Neo-Tokyo, bathing the skyscraper's observation deck in warm golden light, Aki stirred and opened her eyes. She found Kra'zok still watching over her, his alien features softened by what could only be described as affection. In that moment, human and alien shared a look of understanding that transcended species and worlds. Whatever challenges lay ahead, be it confronting the Zor'thax Empire, navigating life on Earth, or bridging the vast gaps between their cultures, they would face them together. An unlikely friendship forged in the depths of a city night had blossomed into something extraordinary, a beacon of hope for both their worlds. As Whisker purred contentedly between them, Aki smiled up at her new protector and friend, ready to embrace the adventure of a lifetime.